What if the golden age glamour you loved was a multi-million-dollar lie, concealing secrets so explosive that stars were forced to forfeit their true selves just to maintain a bankable image? This devastating contract of celebrity reached its breaking point aboard one luxury yacht named the Splendor. The Splendor's last voyage, a comprehensive examination of a star's disappearance. November 29, 1981. A single, profoundly shocking tragedy shattered the polished veneer of Hollywood glamour and carefully constructed perfection. Forever the sudden, bewildering disappearance and confirmed passing by, drowning of one of its most luminous, enduring, and successful stars, Natalie Wood. This single incident, far from being a simple, isolated footnote in a celebrity biography or a minor, unfortunate maritime accident, instantly became a permanent, jagged fissure in the serene, carefully managed image Hollywood projected to the world, violently revealing the often harsh, cold, and fragile reality behind the gilded cage of celebrity life and the extraordinary lengths the powerful would go to protect their own reputations and financial assets. What precisely happened in the tranquil, cold darkness of those Catalina waters near Santa Catalina Island, a secluded, expensive playground for the wealthy and famous, ironically chosen for its isolation and privacy, remains arguably the greatest unsolved mystery of the modern entertainment era. It is a high-profile case where the official truth felt immediately manufactured, rushed, and cynically constructed by powerful forces seeking damage control and protecting valuable, living assets, rather than genuinely discovered through unbiased, rigorous, and exhaustive investigation by law enforcement. It stands as a classic and devastating example of Tinseltown prioritizing its financial reputation, its box office stability, and the high-value careers of its surviving stars over factual rigor and the pursuit of justice for the departed victim, demonstrating a profound lack of accountability that haunted the case for decades and became a testament to the influence of celebrity power. Natalie Wood, the luminous star who began her career as a universally beloved child actress, first charming the world in Miracle on 34th Street at age 9, who then matured into the fiery, definitive voice of teenage angst and rebellion in Rebel Without a Cause, alongside the equally tragic and rebellious James Dean, and finally brought unforgettable grace, vocal talent, and a heartbreaking vulnerability to West Side Story as the tragic Maria, seemed to embody the sophisticated perfection of the Golden Age and its complex, often difficult, transition into modern cinema. Her luminous career began early, driven relentlessly by her mother's consuming ambition. Maria Gurdon, often referred to as a classic stage mother, tightly controlled her daughter's early life, career choices, and even her earnings, and her own undeniable, instinctive talent, and was relentless. Starting before she was 10 and requiring immense emotional sacrifice, intense professional discipline, and a constant, vigilant management of her public persona, transforming her from a beloved juvenile player into one of the most recognized, critically respected, and bankable adult actresses of the 1960s. This was a critical period where she successfully navigated the treacherous shift from the rigid, controlling studio system's iron grip, which previously dictated her roles, friends, and even her personal life, with near total authority, to the more independent model of stardom. A testament to her tenacity, sharp business acumen, and undeniable artistic merit that extended across 3 decades and multiple generations of moviegoers. Her public image was meticulously crafted, largely orchestrated by her ambitious mother and the powerful studios she worked for, particularly Warner Brothers, projecting a sophisticated yet intensely vulnerable female charm that America adored and readily identified with. This carefully constructed persona was built not just on immense natural talent and undeniable physical beauty, but on a carefully managed series of public appearances, meticulously scripted interviews, and strategic career choices that consistently placed her at the pinnacle of celebrity and desirability, making her the perfect subject for magazine covers and fan adoration, representing a kind of aspirational Hollywood elegance, all while masking deep personal struggles. including bouts of depression and anxieties stemming from her intense childhood stardom. Her public persona was the perfect blend of female vulnerability, married to remarkable artistic strength and professional longevity, earning her 3 Academy Award nominations before the age of 25. A staggering achievement rarely matched in Hollywood history, and securing her position as one of the most beautiful and sought-after women in the world. Yet, her final hours would become one of Tinseltown's most enduring, speculated upon, and painful mysteries, a truth buried beneath decades of convenient silence and official obfuscation, suggesting that the public perfection she embodied was as fragile as the glass slipper she never wore, and the unforgiving, demanding world she sought to fully return to require a final, ultimate price she could not escape from. The scene of the tragedy was the Splendor, the actress's 55-foot luxury yacht, a state-of-the-art vessel representing high-end celebrity living, pleasure, and attempted escape from the mainland's relentless scrutiny. It proudly represented the successful and seemingly idyllic culmination of the second Wagner-Wood marriage, a highly scrutinized reconciliation that had captivated the public as a true Hollywood love story sequel, proving that second chances, even among the elite, were possible in the spotlight of intense public scrutiny. This luxurious escape, intended by all accounts as a weekend of relaxation, celebratory intimacy, and friendly conversation for the 3 professional friends, instead quickly became a sealed, floating environment for potential catastrophe, confining the growing tension, deep-seated resentment, and professional jealousy in uncomfortably, inescapably close quarters on the high seas, where there were no disinterested witnesses outside the vessel to report the escalating emotional conflict, creating a sense of total isolation that would prove final. On board that fateful weekend were 3 people: Natalie Wood, the woman whose acting career was finally rekindling with a critically challenging role, and whose artistic ambition was aggressively reigniting after a deliberate period of domesticity. Her husband, the actor Robert Wagner, known affectionately by fans as R.J., who represented the quintessential, handsome, affable, and successful television leading man who had successfully reunited with his famous wife after an earlier, well-publicized separation and divorce, and her co-star from her current comeback film, the intensely private, intellectual, and enigmatic actor Christopher Walken, whose mere presence as a professional colleague and peer introduced a sharp, professional, and slightly awkward tension into the already intimate marital setting, acting as a direct, unwitting catalyst for the underlying, long-suppressed conflict between husband and wife over her autonomy and career direction. At the time, Natalie had purposefully stepped back from the relentless grind of acting and production schedules to raise her 2 young children with Wagner, enjoying the quieter, more traditional domestic life that Hollywood often denied its leading women, a role she seemed to embrace fully after decades of non-stop work and emotionally demanding roles since childhood. However, the opportunity to work alongside the critically acclaimed, unorthodox Walken on the ambitious, mind-bending science fiction film Brainstorm, which would prove to be her last completed work, released posthumously, was forcefully pulling her back into the vibrant, fulfilling spotlight she had once commanded, marking a powerful new artistic chapter and a public reassertion of her professional identity, separate from her role as wife and mother. This process was igniting a strong professional fire that deeply complicated her marriage, stirring old debates about the balance between her demanding career and the traditional demands of family life, a conflict that Wagner had apparently believed long settled in his favor, with his wife choosing domesticity. The yacht itself, a potent symbol of their immense wealth and carefully guarded privacy, quickly became a metaphorical cage containing volatile emotional dynamics, a beautiful, high-stakes stage for a terrifying domestic drama that would have irreversible, life-ending consequences, proving that even immense wealth and fame cannot guarantee safety or happiness when underlying resentments fester. When her body was tragically found the following morning, November 29th, floating nearly a mile from the yacht near the secluded cove of Blue Caverns, clad in nightwear and heavy clothing, the shockwave across the industry and the public was immediate, devastating, and far-reaching across the entire entertainment world. Despite the immense public interest and the celebrity stature of the victim, the official explanation, delivered swiftly by the Los Angeles County coroner Dr. Thomas Noguchi, whose role in other celebrity passings, like Marilyn Monroe's and William Holden's, was also subject to future scrutiny regarding thoroughness, was tidy, immediate, and convenient for public relations. Accidental drowning due to misadventure. The story released to the public was deceptively simple, constructed specifically for mass consumption and minimal inquiry, effectively shielding the surviving men from intense, injurious scrutiny and allowing the industry to quickly resume normal function without the disruption of a major, prolonged scandal or homicide investigation, which would have been an economic disaster for the studios involved and for the stars' careers. The official, initially accepted story went, the three stars had been talking, drinking wine, and socializing on the deck, enjoying a relaxed evening of conversation and cocktails that extended late into the night. Natalie, supposedly bothered by the rhythmic, grating sound of the small motorized dinghy, known as the dink, knocking repeatedly against the side of the larger boat, a minor nuisance that reportedly kept her from sleeping, decided to go up to the deck alone, in the darkness, to secure the small vessel's mooring rope. It was tragically assumed she had slipped on the damp deck or the ladder while navigating the slick surface, possibly hitting her head on the massive hull of the yacht as she fell, which may have stunned, disoriented, or even briefly knocked her unconscious, and plunged into the black, cold water, where she quickly succumbed to the elements and the rapid onset of hypothermia, unable to call for help or swim to safety due to the shock and cold. The narrative heavily stressed that Natalie was known to be a poor swimmer, a profound and intense phobia she carried throughout her life since childhood, stemming from a traumatic onset accident involving a bridge collapse and rushing water, leaving her deeply fearful of dark or turbulent water. This lifelong phobia made a fall into the water especially terrifying and final, lending initial, plausible credence to the idea that panic quickly incapacitated her and contributed directly to her passing. Crucially, the three men on the yacht, Wagner, Walken, and the captain, Dennis Davern, were questioned by Harbor Patrol and homicide detectives for a mere 10 to 15 minutes before being released. A remarkably brief and cursory inquiry for a celebrity passing that allowed Hollywood to quickly mourn, collect its assets, and move on without any meaningful disruption or deep investigation into the contradictory circumstances. This quick, tidy conclusion, critically lacking in circumstantial evidence, rushed to judgment, and echoing the meticulously crafted and often tragic public narratives common to the Golden Age, was immediately suspicious to those who understood the intense power dynamics involved and the contradictory physical evidence at the scene. Found floating in the darkness, the actress was wearing a heavy flannel nightgown over a swimsuit and a bulky red down jacket, a configuration that defied the logic of a casual fall or a deliberate, quick jump into the water to swim. Why would she be so heavily, almost illogically, attired merely to secure a small rope in the middle of the night, knowing her profound inability to swim, without first calling for assistance from her husband or the captain, who were both nearby on the boat? Furthermore, the small craft, dink, was found unsecured, and with its oars missing, a detail suggesting that the initial premise of her solo, simple trip to adjust the rope was deeply flawed or entirely misleading, pointing to a more complicated, active struggle or a deliberate action taken by someone else on board before she entered the water. The combination of the high volume of alcohol consumed by all parties blurring their memories, severely impairing judgment, and potentially contributing to reckless behavior. The lack of any immediate distress calls from the yacht after she was missed, and the heavy, winter-like clothing instantly flagged profound inconsistencies that the initial investigators seemed all too willing to overlook in their rush to close the case. Like the concealed origins of Merle Oberon, the invented personal life of Raymond Burr, or the sham marriage of Rock Hudson, the deeper truth of Natalie Wood's final night would be buried beneath a facade of convenience and carefully guarded reputations. Foregoing the difficult, unpleasant facts for the sake of a simpler, less criminal-sounding narrative that perfectly preserved the valuable celebrity brand and its associated box office potential. It was a lingering influence of the studio era. Even in 1981, when studio power and public relations dictated not only film roles but also the personal lives of its stars, turning every actor into a corporate commodity whose public image was paramount to continued box office success. The idea that a tragedy involving three major actors could be resolved with such speed and simplicity seemed designed less to uncover the facts and more to protect the highly valuable images of the surviving men and the ongoing production schedules they represented, which included a major film with Walken. For years, the official story held a tragic accident with no fault, a convenient tragedy that allowed Hollywood to maintain its serene facade, while the lingering, uncomfortable questions were whispered only among industry insiders who knew the true, bitter value of silence and complicity in the face of tragedy. But the silence was as strained as it was complete. A fragile veneer of composure stretched over a traumatic, unspoken event. In 1986, 5 years after the tragedy, when Christopher Walken was finally pressed about the incident in a rare interview with People magazine, his composure cracked visibly under the strain of the years. He responded to questions with evident anger, stating with forced finality that he did not know what happened, suggesting she simply slipped and fell, and abruptly shut down the conversation as tiresome and old, demonstrating his intense aversion to revisiting the horror and the severe psychological trauma he carried. This nervous, near outburst from a man typically known for his measured intensity and cool control only served to deepen the public's unease, hinting at a severe emotional toll and a profound sense of undisclosed knowledge that he refused to articulate. The difficulty the three men had in maintaining a perfectly cohesive narrative became the true subject of scrutiny, suggesting three separate, convenient, and ultimately incomplete memories of a night they all swore was routine and uneventful. The first version of the story claimed that Natalie went to bed before the two men, who then retired hours later, leaving her alone to face the annoyance of the dinghy, a narrative that neatly absolved the others of immediate responsibility and active involvement. It was in the ensuing darkness that she supposedly went to adjust the dinghy rope, a solitary, easily preventable misstep that tragically ended her life, entirely due to her own actions and lifelong fears of the water. However, witness statements from those who had observed the party on the beach and aboard the yacht in the days prior painted a vivid picture of intense, continuous consumption. Multiple bottles of wine, champagne, and numerous rum daiquiris consumed daily by all three celebrities. It is safe to say that the three individuals were significantly intoxicated on the final night, a crucial detail that was conveniently minimized in the initial police reports, fundamentally undermining the reliability of the witnesses' own recollections and their ability to provide accurate, unbiased accounts of the night's events and the precise timing of their actions. This level of impairment alone should have triggered a far more rigorous, skepticism-driven investigation, treating their accounts as inherently unreliable. This initial, careful story was designed to protect the professional lives of the two surviving actors, maintaining their bankability and avoiding a sensational criminal trial that would not only tarnish the industry, but also its biggest names. But in the quiet darkness of the years that followed, the pristine story of that fateful night would begin to dissolve, piece by shattering piece, starting with the quiet confessions of the men who were there, unable to bear the weight of the lie any longer. The truth, like a submerged object slowly surfacing from the deep, dark Catalina waters, was about to break the surface of Hollywood's careful illusion, revealing the turbulent human drama beneath the peaceful facade of the Golden Age. The erupting truth, jealousy, rage, and the captain's secret. The elegant public portrait of the Wagners, carefully curated for fan magazines, talk shows, and public consumption as the ultimate Hollywood comeback couple, concealed a profound and escalating private struggle, one that finally cracked years later when Robert Wagner broke his silence in a revised public accounting of the events. The initial, calculated silence designed to protect the professional assets and the marriage's public image from the immediate fallout, ultimately became the source of immense suspicion and injurious speculation, proving far more harmful to Wagner's long-term reputation than an immediate, flawed explanation would have been. The public's skepticism grew precisely because the silence felt manufactured, orchestrated, and far too convenient for the surviving male star. The first admission of guilt, or rather, a moment of uncontrolled televised rage, began with a simple confession that revealed the deep, simmering discontent beneath the surface. The famous golden couple had been locked in an escalating, ongoing argument regarding her professional future. The core of the dispute centered squarely on Natalie Wood's renewed desire to pursue her acting comeback, a powerful, artistic resurgence that offered personal fulfillment, creative independence, and allowed her to define her identity beyond motherhood and domestic life, versus Wagner's desire for her to retire completely to focus exclusively on their children and the traditional demands of domestic life, essentially ending her career and confining her to a domestic role that suited his traditional views of marriage and female roles. This was a conflict emblematic of the era's enduring struggle between female ambition and traditional male expectation in marriage, a struggle that reached a lethal pitch played out on the stage of a luxury yacht. This underlying tension, suppressed, denied, and constantly managed in the public eye, proved impossible to contain when heavy alcohol consumption and the catalytic presence of an outsider, Christopher Walken, whose very presence represented Natalie's professional desire, intellectual stimulation, and independence, were introduced into the intimate confines of the Splendor. On the night of the tragedy, this disagreement became intensely heated, fueled by the evening's copious consumption of alcohol and the unavoidable close confines of the yacht, where privacy was impossible and escape was unimaginable. The volatile combination of pride, possessiveness, liquor, and professional rivalry ultimately prompted Natalie to retreat to her stateroom in frustration, seeking a temporary shield from the conflict and hoping to let the anger dissipate, likely seeking solace and quiet in her own space. However, the argument, far from ending, merely shifted its focus, continuing with ferocious intensity between the two male actors in her absence, transforming into a confrontation over male dominance and authority, with Wagner feeling his territory had been trespassed upon by Walken's professional encouragement of his wife. Christopher Walken, her co-star, an intellectual, private, and professionally supportive presence who genuinely respected her talent and dedication, fueled the escalating tension by telling Wagner he believed Natalie possessed a strong natural talent and should absolutely continue her work, praising her dedication to the Brainstorm project as a creative necessity and a personal calling that she should not abandon for domestic expectations. This supportive comment, innocent in its intent but deeply insensitive to the existing marital friction and Wagner's possessive mindset, was instantly perceived by Wagner as a direct and unbearable challenge to his authority, his control over his wife's life, and his desired vision for his marriage, triggering the violent eruption he had fought so long to conceal from the public. The reaction was immediate, visceral, and terrifying, tearing through the evening's thin facade of civilized conversation and exposing the raw, destructive forces beneath. Robert Wagner became instantly enraged, transforming from the charming, debonair leading man of television and film into a figure consumed by corrosive jealousy and blind fury over the perceived betrayal and professional challenge to his masculinity and control. The mask of the sophisticated, composed Hollywood star was violently ripped away, revealing a primal possessiveness that shocked all witnesses and irrevocably redefined the events of the weekend. He then took a wine bottle and smashed it against a nearby table or surface, yelling at Walken to control his own business and stop interfering in his marriage, adding a physical dimension to the emotional outburst that crossed a line into outright violence and property destruction. The shocking, violent sound of shattering glass and the physical evidence of the outburst signaled a complete loss of control, an act entirely antithetical to Wagner's carefully maintained public image as the quintessential gentleman. Even this later account from Wagner, detailed in his memoir, Pieces of My Heart, which conceded to a violent argument and a moment of uncontrolled rage, still seemed to omit crucial details about Natalie Wood's fate, attempting to place the violence within a contained, survivable argument between the men, suggesting only property damage, not personal harm. The narrative now definitively shifted from a solitary, waterlogged accident to a fierce and ongoing private struggle between a woman reclaiming her artistic destiny and a husband demanding domestic finality, a struggle that spilled over with devastating and final consequences in the small hours of the morning. The darkest and most critical details, however, would come years later from the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, a man placed in the impossible position of witnessing a domestic explosion and then being complicit in its subsequent concealment. The burden of this involvement, the immense weight of his silence, the moral compromise, the fear of professional ruin, and the severe psychological trauma of being privy to what truly happened was immense. The secrets of that night were his to carry, and the unbearable moral burden of that knowledge would ultimately compel him to break his silence, first to investigators and then to the public through a book and interviews, providing the crucial, unvarnished counter-narrative that investigators later used to fundamentally reevaluate the case. Davern claimed that during the yacht's voyage, Natalie had grown closer to Walken, finding an intellectual and professional kinship with him that she sorely lacked with Wagner, and the two had been openly flirting and engaging in stimulating conversations about the craft of acting that clearly excluded and intensely annoyed Wagner, feeding his already simmering insecurities. This professional closeness, fueled by their shared artistic pursuit of the Brainstorm project, became the primary engine of Wagner's escalating jealousy, a poisonous, consuming emotion that simmered throughout the weekend, exploding into resentment on that final night. The night of the argument, Davern claimed the hostility escalated far beyond a broken bottle. It became a confrontation rooted in deep-seated possessiveness and a fight for Natalie's entire future and autonomy. When the confrontation reached its peak, Davern alleges he heard Wagner scream at Walken, "What are you trying to do to my wife? Are you trying to engage in a relationship with her?" A demand loaded not just with immediate romantic jealousy, but with a palpable, controlling sense of ownership over Natalie's career and personhood, a chilling echo of the studio era's ability to dictate its female stars' lives and suppress their independence. Davern's subsequent account directly contradicts the initial official story that Natalie was already resting in her stateroom, innocently unaware of the escalating conflict. He stated unequivocally that Natalie was still on deck until the argument reached this fever pitch, likely attempting to mediate or diffuse the situation, or simply retreating to avoid the men's growing tension. She then stormed off to her room in distress, seeking refuge from the uncontrollable anger and intoxication, and Robert Wagner followed her immediately, ensuring the final, and most crucial, confrontation took place in complete, horrifying privacy inside the small cabin. What followed, heard clearly by the captain from his nearby quarters, was a huge fight that sounded to Davern both very loud verbally and as though it got physical, suggesting a traumatic struggle inside the small cabin before she went overboard, an essential piece of evidence minimized or ignored by the original, cursory inquiry, but later supported by re-examined forensic evidence. It was the final hours of that night, the long, agonizing silence between the sound of the fight and the eventual call for help, that became truly damning and formed the basis for later suspicion. Hours after the sounds of the altercation had ceased, Davern saw Wagner looking disheveled and sweating profusely, the physical exhaustion and visible distress of a man who had just endured a terrifying, possibly violent confrontation that left him physically exhausted. Critically, he also heard the distinct sound of the dinghy being untied from the yacht and paddling away, a crucial, unexplained action that definitively contradicted the passive theory that she simply slipped while trying to secure it. Later, at approximately 1:30 o'clock in the morning, Wagner and Davern were having a drink together, an act of shocking casualness, given the preceding turmoil and the missing actress, when Wagner casually left to check on his wife. He returned shortly after, claiming he couldn't find her, a response that lacked the immediate, frantic panic one would expect from a husband whose wife had mysteriously vanished into the water. a delay that suggested a disturbing level of composure and possibly a calculated attempt to maintain a facade and manage the optics of the situation, allowing critical, life-saving time to lapse, time that was crucial in the cold waters off Catalina, where hypothermia sets in rapidly and proves quickly final. When Davern, already fearful that she may have fallen overboard due to the prior commotion, instinctively went to use the yacht's powerful searchlight to scan the black water, hoping to catch a glimpse of the actress, Wagner prevented him from doing so. The chilling, unforgivable reason given by Wagner was that he didn't want to bring attention to the yacht or create a public scandal or scene that would involve law enforcement, suggesting a priority of reputation and legal protection over immediate human life and a potential rescue. This detail, above all others, transformed the narrative from one of reckless accident to one of conscious inaction, deliberate delay, and potential concealment of the night's events, prioritizing the maintenance of their public image and avoiding scandal over the immediate, life-saving rescue of his wife. Only much later, after crucial hours had elapsed and the chance of finding her alive was drastically reduced, did they finally radio for emergency assistance, a delay that may have been the ultimate fatal factor in Natalie Wood's passing and a potential criminal act in itself. The captain has been unflinchingly vocal about his experiences and his steadfast belief that the full truth was deliberately covered up to protect the star's image and the careers of the men involved. Robert Wagner, despite being confronted by family and media who doubted his story, continued his successful career, largely avoiding the topic publicly, letting the comfortable illusion of an accident stand. For Christopher Walken, the choice to remain quiet has seemingly allowed him to avoid the direct glare of the scandal entirely. He remains a man haunted by the knowledge of those final, catastrophic moments, choosing silence to protect a life that was indelibly changed by the tragedy he witnessed and the secret he continues to carry, a heavy burden that has been the focus of persistent, investigative journalism and public debate. The complex and painful human emotions, the intense, controlling jealousy, the dangerous consumption of intoxicants, the internal conflict over career versus domesticity, and the primal struggle for control that drove the events aboard the Splendor mirrors, the burdens carried by so many Golden Age figures. Whether it was Judy Garland battling her father's family secret and the studio's demanding schedule, or Spencer Tracy struggling with his guilt and alcoholism while maintaining a secret love with Katharine Hepburn, the polished image often concealed the deepest, most destructive human wounds that ultimately broke through the veneer of Hollywood glamour, sometimes with lethal force and permanently injurious consequences. The unfinished story, reclassification, new evidence, and the lingering cost. The dark, agonizing secrets that haunted the Splendor that night would not remain buried forever in the depths of Catalina's cold, indifferent waters, refusing to be fully swallowed by the ocean's vastness and silence. The immense weight of the truth, a truth concerning the final, terrifying moments of one of Hollywood's most cherished and talented actresses, eventually exerted a powerful, relentless force that even the most influential reputations and studio silences could not fully resist or suppress. Much like the concealed paternity that tormented Clark Gable and Loretta Young's secret child for decades, this deception demanded its own difficult and prolonged reckoning in the court of public and legal opinion. The vast, indifferent ocean may have served as a silent witness to the tragedy, but the tireless persistence of the Wood family, specifically her determined sister, Lana Wood, who openly challenged the official narrative for decades and risked her own career to do so. The public's unwavering skepticism and the slow grinding machinery of law enforcement would eventually speak, systematically chipping away at the meticulously constructed facade of accidental tragedy until it crumbled under the pressure of re-examination and damning new testimonial evidence. For 30 years, the case was officially considered closed, designated by authorities as a simple misfortune, and relegated to a regrettable, if sensational, footnote in the otherwise glamorous biography of Natalie Wood. Yet, the persistent questions, the glaring inconsistencies in the original, brief accounts provided by the men on the yacht, and the lingering sense of injustice among those close to the case proved too substantial to ignore. Particularly damning was the increasingly vocal testimony of the central witness, Captain Dennis Davern, who, having finally broken his decades-long silence and fear of retribution, continued to publicly and vehemently contradict the official narrative, transforming the narrative from one of simple accident into a credible account of deliberate cover-up and potential criminal negligence. The immense pressure from the public, investigative biographers like Suzanne Finstad, and the surviving members of the Wood family eventually became undeniable, forcing a reluctant justice system to reconsider its initial swift judgment. In 2011, a full 30 years after her passing, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department took the dramatic and unprecedented step of reopening the case, an official acknowledgement of the profound and persistent doubt that had shadowed the event for 2 generations. This decision was a powerful moral victory for those who felt the initial investigation had been suspiciously incomplete, cursory, and clearly biased toward protecting the careers and reputations of Hollywood's powerful elite, a final, painful echo of the studio system's ultimate, controlling reach and influence over law enforcement and the media. This critical decision to reopen the file was further bolstered, remarkably, by the very man who had issued the original, defining verdict. The original coroner, Dr. Thomas Noguchi, famed for his meticulous work on celebrity passings and known as the coroner to the stars, stated publicly that his initial finding of accidental drowning had been accompanied by various unanswered questions that had never been adequately resolved. Specifically, he cited the unusual circumstances of the event, the high level of alcohol in her system which would severely impair judgment and mobility, and the critical lack of a clear, coherent, or consistent account from the surviving men regarding precisely how Natalie Wood actually entered the dark, cold water. This extraordinary admission from the very source of the official truth was a seismic shift, officially shattering the myth of the simple accident and validating decades of painful speculation that a far darker, more volatile domestic drama had transpired on the yacht. The subsequent police investigation, now fueled by fresh scrutiny, the latest forensic technologies, and the absence of immediate reputational pressure, gained substantial momentum over the ensuing years. Detectives drew heavily on the now public testimony of Captain Davern, who maintained under oath that the original account was a deliberate fabrication meant to protect Robert Wagner's immensely valuable career and reputation. The renewed inquiry demanded a full, comprehensive review of all the original evidence, including the accounts of the violent argument, the smashing of the wine bottle, and, most damningly, the refusal to use the searchlight, an act of passive inaction that may have constituted criminal negligence in the eyes of the law, suggesting a possible failing to render aid scenario that tragically cost a life. This exhaustive investigative process, guided by the re-examined facts, led to the most significant legal development yet, fundamentally and irrevocably changing the nature of the tragedy. In February of 2018, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department formally took the decisive action of reclassifying the manner of Natalie Wood's passing from accidental drowning to suspicious or undetermined, which was the eventual final ruling, specifically to include the possibility of non-accidental trauma, meaning the initial cause of her passing was no longer clear and ruled out the simple accident theory. This official change confirmed the legal opinion that something beyond mere chance had occurred that night. It strongly suggested that foul play, criminal negligence, or a traumatic domestic event leading directly to her passing could not be ruled out by the comprehensive body of evidence now available. Furthermore, the department went a decisive step further. They named Robert Wagner, who was then 87 years old, as a person of interest in the case, a designation that clearly indicated the investigation was focused squarely on the last person known to be with her before she entered the cold water. This legal reclassification completely inverted the narrative, shifting the tragedy from one of unfortunate chance to one of potential culpability and calculated concealment, demanding answers where before there was only silence and professional courtesy. The role of Christopher Walken in the aftermath remains one of the case's most perplexing and enigmatic elements, a silent shadow cast over the decades-long investigation. It has been noted in the press that this intensely private actor has indeed spoken with detectives since the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department took the decisive action to reopen the case, reportedly fully cooperating as a witness and providing his own account of the violent argument that erupted between Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood. Crucially, Walken has consistently been classified by law enforcement purely as a witness, not a suspect or a person of interest, a distinction that theoretically absolves him of legal culpability. However, his absolute, steadfast decision to remain silent publicly about the events of that final night, a silence maintained across decades despite intense media pressure and the public's unwavering skepticism, remains a source of deep scrutiny, philosophical debate, and persistent speculation. This unwavering reticence, while certainly protecting his critically acclaimed career and allowing him to continue his personal life away from the immediate, harsh spotlight of this decades-long scandal, remains one of the final, painful ambiguities of the tragedy. It begs the question, what specific, unspeakable details does he possess that he refuses to articulate to the world? Perhaps the most visceral and indisputable confirmation of the trauma came from the final autopsy report, re-examined decades later by modern forensics experts who focused on the pattern and significance of the injuries. Specifically, the number and distribution of contusions. It revealed deep bruising on the actress's body injuries that pointed not merely to an accidental fall against a slippery hull, but to a preceding desperate struggle or being forcefully subdued. These injuries, particularly noticeable on her arms, neck, and legs, suggested she was already severely distressed or physically incapacitated before entering the water, which strongly supports the captain's account of a struggle inside the cabin. This physical evidence, concealed or tragically dismissed for years, is the final, agonizing truth that the yacht and its occupants could not hide, strongly suggesting that Natalie Wood fought fiercely for her life before she passed away. The cost of this unfinished story is indelible and ongoing. Robert Wagner has maintained his long life and career, but he carries the permanent shadow of suspicion, forever linked to the ambiguous passing of his wife and the concealment that followed. Walken carries the silent burden of his knowledge, a psychological weight that never lifted despite his fame. But the final, immeasurable tragedy belongs to Natalie Wood, the supremely talented star who sought an artistic comeback and personal fulfillment, only to find a premature, violent, and lonely end, shrouded forever in ambiguity and speculation. Denied full justice by the circumstances of her celebrity and passing, the case remains officially cold, but the reclassification ensures the truth, however painful, is acknowledged in the official record. The ocean holds many secrets, but few are as tragic or as closely guarded as the final moments of Natalie Wood, a star whose light was extinguished far too soon. Her story is a poignant, powerful reminder that the relentless pursuit of glamour and the demanding need to preserve an image often required profound sacrifices, both emotional and, in her case, ultimately ending in her passing. Natalie Wood's film performances were masterful, enduring testaments to her talent, but the most agonizing performance may have been the one the actors involved maintained for decades after the Splendor docked for the final time. They survived the night, but the complete truth did not. As we look back at Hollywood's golden age through the lens of these dark revelations, it is crucial to understand that these truths do not, in any way, diminish the enduring elegance of the performances, the masterful craft of the filmmaking, or the sheer brilliance of the films themselves. Instead of tarnishing the era, the knowledge of these hidden burdens adds layers of profound complexity. If anything, knowing the immense personal struggle, the concealed conflicts, the devastating anxiety, and the tragic price paid, often in emotional currency, or even in life, to maintain the perfect, profitable public illusion, adds a profound depth and an undeniable human resonance to the artistry we still admire today. When we watch a classic film, understanding that the star on screen was wrestling with fabricated identities, immense professional pressures, or a life-altering domestic secret provides a new, haunting context. The dramatic power of their performances suddenly feels earned, reflecting a battle fought both on the set and behind closed doors. The stars of Hollywood's golden age, far from being the one-dimensional deities they were marketed as, shine no less brightly for having been revealed as deeply complex, achingly flawed human beings, struggling under the crushing weight of impossible expectation, personal vulnerability, and devastating human emotion. Their greatness is amplified by the realization that they achieved such enduring artistry while fighting the hardest battles off-screen, a testament to their resilience, even in the face of profound, systemic corruption and psychological strain. And so, the lights dim on another chapter of Hollywood's glittering, yet deeply shadowed, history. The stories from the Golden Age remind us that beneath the glamour and the carefully constructed illusion, the struggles were intensely, tragically human. If you felt the pull of the past and the weight of these untold secrets, please join our community of history enthusiasts. Give this video a chance to help us keep these complex narratives alive, and subscribe so you never miss a revelation from Tinseltown's archives. What Golden Age secret do you think deserves a closer look? Let us know in the comments below. We cherish your thoughts and insights. Would you like me to explore another hidden history or concealed scandal from the Golden Age of Hollywood, such as the mysterious end of life of George Reeves, or perhaps the dark truth behind the career of Judy Garland? Until next time, keep the magic of the movies and the truth behind them shining brightly. Thanks for watching.